So hi everybody, thank you for joining us today. I am really, really excited to be joined by the RAF, well, also known as the Royal Air Force. So hello for everyone from the RAF, and thank you very much for joining us. I'm also joined by my colleague Sophie. You'll all recognise Sophie. She's done numerous webinars with us. So hello Sophie, thank you for joining us today. Okay, so Gradcracker, actually, well, I feel like I've got a long history with the RAF because the RAF was actually the first ever account I got here at Gradcracker. So the RAF have actually been advertising with us for 6 years, which is fantastic. The RAF is part of the 5-year club. So for anyone that doesn't know what the 5-year club is, it's actually a list of companies that have advertised consistently on Gradcracker for 5 years or more. And with the RAF being with us for 6 years, it's phenomenal, very exciting. And throughout this time, I've actually been lucky enough to have multiple station visits where I've actually been to RAF College Cranwell, RAF Coningsby in Lincolnshire. And these trips I managed to record, and I've got lots of pictures. So you can find all out about my trip and my days with the RAF within the company hub on Gradcracker. So make sure you take a look at that because it's very useful to refer back to. One of my most memorable trips was when I went to RAF Coningsby, and I actually got the chance to sit in a Typhoon fighter jet, which was absolutely amazing. I was actually going to show you a picture because it made me so happy. This is me sitting in a Typhoon fighter jet all day. I kept saying, I was like, please can I go and sit in there? Please can I go and sit in? So I just wanted to show everyone that because it was such an amazing day. One of the biggest things I've learned about, working with the RAF is what life is actually like in the RAF and the amazing opportunities that these engineering officers get to experience. So what I really hope today that everyone gets from this webinar is the opportunity to kind of understand and kind of, really become open to a life in the military and really consider it, because honestly, I've learned some fantastic things from them and some amazing things they actually do. Anyway, less from me and more from these guys. So Keith, I wondered if you could introduce yourself, tell me your job title and the years that you've served in the RAF.
Yeah, certainly. So my name's Flight Lieutenant Keith Edge. I'm currently an engineering recruitment specialist based at RAF Cranwell in Lincolnshire. And I've been in the Air Force now for just coming up to 25 years in total. So yeah, man and boy, fully served.
Fantastic. Gareth?
How you doing? I'm Gareth Bolton. I'm also a flight lieutenant. I'm currently serving at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. I work for the Permanent Joint Headquarters as part of the Joint Force Communications and Information Systems Middle East, developing requirements for the broader Middle East.
Fantastic. Amy?
Hi, I'm Flight Lieutenant Amy Parkinson. I've been in the RAF for 5.5 years now, and I'm currently the Typhoon Electrical Engineering Authority.
Great. Fons?
Hi, I'm Sunit Difonseca. I've been in the RAF for 10 years. Currently, I work in MOD London. I work on a project on behalf of UK government, working with the UK's largest defence contractor in supplying aircraft and other equipment to Saudi Arabia.
Brilliant. And James?
Hi there, yes, I'm Squadron Leader James Maguire. I've been in the RAF for 9 years now, and I'm currently on the United Kingdom Joint Force Air Component, which is the Air Force's deployable headquarters based out of High Wycombe, and I head up the communications branch out of that deployable headquarters.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. So Keith, please can you give the audience an insight into today's modern day RAF?
Yeah, so really the Air Force is the military's air component, shall we say, and our primary roles is obviously defending UK interests at home and abroad as well. And it's not just a case of, obviously, we can do kinetic, which is one of our main and primary roles, but we also aid in aid as well, delivery aid and defence engagement, which is quite a large piece nowadays as well. So delivering what we call soft power, so that engagement piece, spreading the good word of UK businesses and UK PLC across the globe.
Brilliant. So before we kind of officially start, as you'll all be aware, the title of this webinar is Why Life in the RAF is No Ordinary Job. And I am definitely a believer of that now. So what I wanted to do is kind of understand life as an engineering officer, and I want to do a bit of a misconception round. And I thought the officers could give us, the audience, kind of an answer to some of those most frequently asked questions. So I wondered if we could start with Gareth, and if you could cover and explain to me a bit about your role and how often do you actually get to go home in your role?
Hi, right, okay, so within my role, like I said earlier, I manage the broader requirements for the communications and information systems for the broader Middle East. So that's capturing requirement for anybody from the Royal Navy down in Bahrain to the Army committed to Op Shader on the ground in places like Iraq and Kuwait. Also take care of what we call the 900 Expeditionary Air Wing series, so the likes of 901, 906, 903 and 902, who are based out in Oman, United Arab Emirates, here in Qatar and over in Cyprus as well. So yeah, we've got quite a broad remit over here. My day-to-day business is actually working with the guys very closely, working as relying on the training that I've had as a requirements manager, and one of my roles in one of the jobs that I had in my last role in the A6 Force headquarters back at High Wycombe as well, to understand what the guys need to be able to commit operationally and what they need to be able to work to day to day. In terms of going home, at the moment, COVID-19 is playing a bit of a different thing for me. So with me being based overseas, I'm on a 6-month tour. I left the UK in the middle of July. I'm not scheduled to go home until back end of January, just flights dependent and my replacement taking over from me. Generically, you're allowed to have a period of 2 weeks rest and relaxation. Right now, because of COVID, and it's seen as an operational risk, that to send someone home, we might not necessarily get them back. So unfortunately, I'm having to forego having the 2 weeks off, but it's just part of the job.
Sure, brilliant. Amy, you next?
Yeah, so one of the common misconceptions certainly about engineering is that it's a man's job and there aren't that many females that do it. So the other day I counted up all the engineering officer roles that I could think of on station, and over a third of them are actually females at the moment. So there's 34 jobs and 13 of them are filled by female officers.
Brilliant. Girl power, I like it.
Absolutely.
Fons, next?
So I'll talk about how long someone needs to be working for the RAF once they join. So once you join the RAF, the initial offer is a 12-year commission. So that's 12 years of job security. What we say is there's a minimum 3 years of return of service once you finish your technical specialist training.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, you give a period of notice to leave, and then you leave the service. Some people stay on until age 55. Some people use that experience, whether it's 3 years, 6 years, 12 years, as a springboard to a second career.
Great. James?
Great. So what I wanted to cover off was, I think it's quite a common misconception that the military is by design quite a rigid and regimented organisation, which to some extent it is, but actually whatever part of the military you operate in, it is absolutely all about the people. And I think commanders across the military, everyone that I speak to and know of, say that is the key focus. It's all about people. So for me, myself, I have a young family, a partner and 2 young children. And again, another common misconception is that isn't compatible with military life, but actually the opposite couldn't be more true. The military will provide you a lot more flexibility than a lot of civilian organisers I've seen, and will provide you. And a lot of my colleagues and friends I went to university with are in jobs now where they don't have the same flexibility I do. And there will be times we do stuff like Gareth is now, we're out of area and we forego seeing our families for 6 months. But the trade-off for that is the military will often do everything it can to support you, and the opportunity is there to support you and actually be very compatible with family life.
Brilliant. Keith, moving back to you, can you tell the audience a bit about the two main engineering officer routes that we have advertised on GradCracker, and the training that the graduates would go through to kind of become an official engineering officer?
Yeah, so we offer two distinct areas, or two disciplines, probably a better way of describing it, for engineering officer. The first being aero systems engineering officer, and the second is communications electronic. Like everything in the military, we like a good abbreviation, so we call it CE for communications electronics and AS for aero systems. The two areas, what we would look at from the actual graduate would be preferably a recognised degree that is accredited through one of the professional registration bodies with the Engineering Council. With that said though, what I would say is that we will look at any sort of STEM related degree subject on a case by case. So there's no hard and fast sort of education stipulation, as long as it is a engineering or a physics or a STEM related degree topic is where we'll actually look at for their qualifications. The two roles offer completely something different, and I think we're going to talk about that with the actual specialists on the panel, that they can talk about some of those roles a little bit more in depth than I can, because I'm from one side. Yeah. But we also offer sponsorship as well. So what that means is that we could actually sponsor a student through their university years with a bursary. And with that bursary, if they maintain obviously the required standards with their education and fitness levels, that there's a guaranteed job for them at the end of that process as well. So, we're looking from anyone from, who's about to start university to those that have obviously graduated and undergraduates as well.
You mentioned about fitness levels there, Keith, and I think that at first that was one of my misconceptions. I thought, oh gosh, do you have to be super fit to apply? There is obviously fitness tests that the candidate has to go through, but talk to me a bit about that and what that actually entails.
Yeah, so our selection process is a little bit different from other companies because of some of the rigorous work and the situations that we actually ask our people to, get involved with. Mm-hmm. So a normal route selection would be fill out an online application through the careers website. You would then be contacted and called into your local careers office, and they give you some more information and get you ready for a normal job interview is the best way to look at it. You'd be interviewed on obviously your background, and then we do a medical examination to make sure that you're medically fit for service. Certain things like colour blindness you can't do in certain engineering roles, just as an example. Mm-hmm. And then we put you through a fitness assessment as well. And that is really just preparing you to make sure that you're fully capable for when we do put you through phase 1 training. We're going to take somebody who has spent student life, and then try and convert them into a potentially a military commander as well. So the fitness level is not beyond anybody at all, really. It's just we would like somebody to have a level of fitness, just so that when we do put them into our phase 1 training cycle, that they're actually prepared for it as well. There is a lot of information out there. There's information obviously on the GradCracker website as well about what fitness levels you need to obtain. So certainly achievable for everybody.
And the other area which I hope we talk about today is the sport facilities that the RAF kind of cover, and you've got so many fantastic facilities out there, even to athlete level, don't you, where the officers get the chance to experience and do some phenomenal things. So, it could really be a start in someone's life, getting fit, getting active, and then potentially finding a sport or an area within sport that they're really interested in. So with you guys offering that, it is really, really positive. So next, I want to kind of move on to Sophie, and I want you to kind of talk to everyone a bit about their experiences and what their life is actually like in the RAF.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for all the introductions, and I'm really excited to kind of delve into your guys' experiences a little bit more, because I think there's so much more that we can, more myths and misconceptions that we can kind of bust as we go along as well. And we've had a few conversations leading up to this. But where I want to start really is just something that is going to be of real interest to our audience. And getting 4 different opinions on this is going to be really interesting. So why did you choose a career in the military, and then specifically the RAF? And I'm going to ask you all that same question. So I'll stay in the same order, and we'll start with Gareth and then move around the panel.
So I joined the RAF as a 19-year-old. So I've been in just over 20 years, actually pushing 21, and I'm trying to find the right words to utilise. I looked at what was going on around me in my own personal life. I left school way too early. I left school when I was 15, and then I got to the point where I thought, do you know, I need to do something better. And I was a gamekeeper before I joined the Air Force. I had a bit of an epiphany one day whilst I was out feeding my pheasants. That is not a joke. I'm not making that up. A lot of friends who are, and so a lot of my social group back home in Lancashire were, the mechanical, electrical engineers, solicitors, doctors, one or two other bits and pieces. And I was kind of like, do you know what? I know I'm on the same par with those guys intellectually. Why can't I do that? So I ended up joining the Air Force as an engineering technician on the electronics side originally. And I just progressed through my career, and I needed to take the next step, and I ended up commissioning off. So I went through the internal commissioning scheme called the basic entry scheme, which allowed me to the Air Force put me through a foundation degree. I ended up going through and topping up to a full degree through Lincoln University, where I scored a first class honours, and I've ended up out here now in LED as working for PGHQ. So yeah, I've had a very, very probably different route in terms of some of the guys here, apart from Keith maybe, but it's been a really good journey for me.
Great, thank you so much for that, Gareth. And we're definitely going to come back to you later on to talk about some of those education opportunities that you got and what you're doing now as well, to find out a little bit more about how that's worked for you too. So if we go on to Amy next, why did you join the military and specifically RAF?
So my parents took me to an air show when I was about 13, and that sort of kicked off my sort of obsession with aircraft and the RAF. And from that point, I remember being stood at the end of the runway watching the displays and thinking that's what I want to do. So initially I wanted to be a pilot, but that didn't work out. In hindsight, it's probably for the best. So when I found out I couldn't be a pilot, I decided that I also want to work with the aircraft. I went down the route of becoming an engineer instead. My career path's been quite different to Gareth. So I joined as a direct entrant. So went through school, went through university, applied in my last year at uni. So I was a final year bursar, and then joined. So I'd had no experience of the RAF before I'd commissioned.
Okay, great. And again, we're going to come back to find out more about your final year journey a little bit later on. And Fons, on to you.
So my career path is different to both Gareth and Amy's. I was born and brought up in Sri Lanka. I did my undergrads and some postgrad research here. So when I joined the RAF, I joined as a Commonwealth national. The requirement is that you need to have lived in the UK for approximately 5 years, so that the security or the background checks can be done. I'm a late joiner as well. I was 27 years old when I joined up, whereas most of my direct entry colleagues would have been 21, 22 years old. When I wanted to join the RAF, the engineer branch was closed. So I joined up as an air traffic controller initially, but I had my engineering qualifications already. So when the branch reopened, I got an opportunity to transfer across to the engineering branch. So that's my route to the RAF. And at the moment, as I mentioned, I work in London as a Aerosystems engineer officer.
Lovely, thank you, Fons. And then finally on to you, James.
Thanks, Sophie. Yeah, so similar to Amy in that I joined around the university time. So while I was in sixth form, a careers officer came to my school, and I've always had a curiosity and an interest in the military. I used to go to sort of the military air tattooing shows and stuff like that. And that kind of awoke that interest in me. The careers officer came, gave us a presentation on the RAF, and I really liked what really appealed to me was the diversity of roles available in the RAF compared to some of the other services. And that sparked the interest in me for the adventure and the opportunities that the RAF might present. And also knowing that I'd go through university with them. I joined university at Loughborough knowing that I'd go out as an engineer at the other end. And so some job security, but knowing that I was going into an interesting and diverse career path in the future was what really interested me. And as Keith alluded to beforehand, there's maybe a conception that once you sign up, that's it. You're in until the end of your career and you've got to stay in and do a full service. But knowing that you can actually walk away after that return of service if it's not for you, and walk away with some fabulous life experiences and have really grown as a person after that. It was kind of a win-win. So from that moment in sixth form sparked my curiosity, and here I am now, still enjoying my career 9 years later. So it's going well.
That's great, and I think that's right. That misconception is something that I think probably even I had. With Jessica working so closely with the RAF, I perhaps didn't know about the flexibility, and that after 3 years you can go on, and how many people do that and take such valuable experiences away from their time with the RAF into other careers. And also the diversity of roles, I think, is something that we're going to really find out a lot more about today. So firstly, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to delve into a little bit more about each of your individual careers. I'm actually going to stick with you, James, and talk a little bit more around your journey firstly before going on to the other guys. Because I know when you originally joined university, and obviously you had the idea that you wanted to work within the RAF, but you originally were planning to go down the aerosystems route. But then you moved down to you changed your mind and went down communications electronics. Can you tell us a little bit about why you made that change and what drew you to that side of things?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I went down that path purely out of ignorance, if I'm honest, initially. So I knew I wanted to do an engineering degree, and I had an interest in engineering. And the obvious choice for me, knowing very little about the Air Force when I originally started on this journey, was that if you're an engineer, you must be working on aircraft and platforms. So the obvious choice is you're going to be an aerosystems engineer, because the Air Force has aircraft and that's what we engineer on. But actually, while I was going through university, I was part of a training squadron, and we had a new wing commander come in on my training squadron who was a communications and electronics engineer, his background. So I sat down and spoke to him in my final year about his career path and what he'd done, and the diversity of roles he'd done, working for everything to supporting the UK MOD's space constellation of satellites that provide the military communication systems, all the way down to working closely on platforms such as the Typhoon to engineer the computers and the systems on board to ensure that that platform can fly. There's a huge spectrum there, from strategic space activity all the way down to supporting aircraft getting off the ground. Really appealed to me. So again, it's in no way to take anything away from the AS role, just that sparked my interest. And since leaving university and going through my career, I've had a diverse range of roles which has captured that. And I've done very similar in that I've been looking after strategic satellite communication systems one instance, and next minute I'm looking at rolling out new IT systems to people's desks within a headquarters, so a far more tactical role. Yeah. So that's what captured my interest, and that's what made me transition. So it's an interesting balance. I've had an AS engineering background from an education perspective, and now being a communications branch from the Air Force, which isn't normal, but again puts me in a good place to understand the AS side when I am working with platforms and aircraft in the future of my career as well. So that kind of captures me, I think.
Fantastic. And yeah, something you've just touched upon is, so far in your career, you've had a really high level of responsibility in a number of different roles that you've had. And I know when we were leading up to the webinar, you kind of told us about a few of those different experiences. You've been out to the Falklands and worked out there. Can you tell us a bit about some of the highlights of your career you think you have sort of responsibility-wise and working in those types of teams?
Yeah, absolutely. So, straight off the bat, in my very first tour out of university, as 22 years old, in charge of a team of 52 personnel. So we call that a flight of individuals. And again, that could range from everybody from somebody who's just left school, all the way up to 45-year-old established flight sergeant who's looking to you for mentoring and guidance on their career, their life, and day-to-day work management. So that's a really interesting and high responsibility position to be put in at such a young age, with everybody looking to you day one out of training to provide that. From a work perspective, my time in the Falklands was very interesting. As I say, I'm responsible for the communication systems at a strategic level from the whole of the South Atlantic. So that's the Falkland Islands all the way up to Ascension and everything in between. And again, as I was then 24, 25 years old, looking after all of that, reporting back to a 4-star headquarters similar to where Gareth is now, and responsible for what is a strategic asset for the UK, the Falkland Islands, based far away from the UK, all sitting with me to ensure that that was serviceable and assured. It was very, very interesting, very, very challenging. But again, I got a lot out of that. I learned a lot, and you are put in positions of responsibility, but set up to succeed in those throughout your career.
Brilliant. And how has that led on to what you're doing now? Could you tell us a little bit more about your current role and what that really entails?
Yeah, sure. So the theme kind of in my career has been, I've spent a lot of time in deployable roles, looking at deployable headquarters or deployable communication systems. So On leaving the Falklands, I went up to Leeming to work at a unit called 90 Signals Unit, and effectively they are the deployable communication providers for the Air Force. So if the Air Force were to go somewhere on an expeditionary footing, or to go to a new airbase we hadn't been to before, the theory is that 90SU would go there and enable the airfield and enable the entire communication setup. So I spent some time there looking at everything, again, from application development for the deployed space all the way down to the physical hardware supporting that and ensuring it was held at readiness to go out the door. And in my current role now, I'm part of the Deployable Headquarters for the Royal Air Force. So again, if we were to deploy somewhere on an expeditionary footing and go somewhere new, the theory is that the current organisation I'm part of would go out and provide the command and control elements of that, the air headquarters working into the joint command headquarters, and we're there to provide that on behalf of the Air Force. So we're held at very high readiness, which is 5 days notice to move to go anywhere in the world to provide that role, which again ties into my experience back at 90SU, which put me again in a really strong position to be where I am now. And a little bit like Gareth now, we're looking at everything from shaping the future capability requirements across defence, so how we do deployable comms, all the way back to the tactical ability to enable it now and make sure we can get out the door and do our job today.
Brilliant. And how long have you been serving in the RAF so far, James?
So it's been 9 years since I came out of phase 2 training, but I was obviously destined to join the Air Force from joining university, which is 4 years as well.
Just thinking there's a huge amount of experience in those 9 years, isn't there? A huge amount of different things that you've done, which I think kind of leads into the no ordinary job thing. You know, you've been to so many different places, so that's great to hear. I know one of the things you touched upon at the beginning as well was about work-life balance, and that was something that I was going to mention to you, and how important that is to you. Is there anything you want to add around that, that might be another misconception for people outside of the military about, you know, having a young family, you know, family time at home? Is there anything else that you want to add on to that before I move on to some of the other panelists?
Yeah, I think the final thing I'd add on to it, which ties to what I've just said, is obviously I'm at a unit now which is held at very high readiness, which again is quite unique. There's not a lot of units held at very high readiness across defence, let alone the Air Force. So being at 5 days notice to move, it means that in theory you've never really got any continuity because you're always expected to be ready to go away. But actually, again, being all about people, commanders do everything they can to plan and ensure that you can have a normal life around that. As you can see, I'm sat at home in my kitchen today doing this, for example, but now to take my young one to school this morning and do the school run. So you can have normality around that. And again, COVID has played a part in that. But even prior to COVID, work from home was a thing. You know, the Air Force is modernising as an employer and enhancing those modern ways of working. So despite being a very high readiness unit, I'm able to have days where I work from home, still do the family thing and find the right balance to do what I need to do for myself as well.
Lovely. Thank you very much, James. Right, moving on to you, Amy. I'm going to start by finding out a little bit more about your career journey as well. So I know you mentioned in the introductions that you applied to the RAF when you were in your final year of university, but you also received a sponsorship. Can you let us know a little bit more about how that worked?
Yeah, so I applied to the RAF when I was in my final year at uni. At the time, I didn't actually know anything about a bursary. I was just too impatient to wait until I graduated and then wait to go through the selection process. So I think I applied in the March, and I found out in the May that I'd been successful. And that's when they called me and said, actually, you're eligible for this final year bursar. So similar to James, as long as I passed all my courses, I had a guaranteed job on graduation. But the other bonus of being a bursar is that I got some money towards it as well. Again, I thought because in May I was just coming up to my exams, I had, I think, 2 weeks left of term. I didn't think they were going to give me any money for it because I'd applied too late, but actually they gave me £3,000. I think normally people apply at the start of their last year, not most of the way towards the end of it. So that was a nice bonus. But the main reason I did it was that I wanted a guaranteed job once I'd graduated. So I graduated in the July, and then by the time sort of all the admin and everything had been done, I started training the following January.
Okay, great. And one of the things I wanted to touch upon with you, Amy, was your career journey so far, because I think you've had a slightly different journey to especially Gareth and James in terms of where you've been based, because you've not done sort of big deployments abroad, and I wanted to kind of find out, you know, how that works and how much input you have into shaping your career with the RAF as well.
So you do have quite a lot of choice, actually. So our postings are allocated by someone known as a desk officer. So there's one squadron leader that sort of looks after all the flight lieutenants in the engineering aerosystems branch, but they're very open to discussion, and a lot of things come into play depending on what you want to do, where you want to be. So I was quite lucky. I did go out of area for 6 months, which I wanted to do, but it's also quite good to use as a bargaining chip. So I was based at Lossiemouth in the north of Scotland, and my husband was based at Marham in Norfolk. So it was a bit of a commute. So I wanted to come down to Lincolnshire and to Coningsby. So I had initially had a discussion with the desk officer and said, look, I'm interested in going on to Typhoon and I want to go to Coningsby, what's available? The job I initially wanted wasn't available, but there was another one. So I managed to get that one, but they are very open to sort of what's going on in your personal life. So if you've got kids that are at school, they're very open to not posting you to the other end of the UK for a bit of stability. And like James said, the working from home thing is fantastic. I'm also working from home today. So you can have a pretty normal life while still being in the RAF.
Lovely. And so can you tell me a little bit more about the roles that you've had to date as well? Because obviously we've heard about locations and stuff, but the roles that you have are quite special. So
so my first job when I was at Lossiemouth, I was in charge of all the armaments and survival equipment on station. So that was everything from looking after the ejection seats, and if we did sort of bombing exercises, all the heavy weapons and the regulations surrounding that, but also all of the flying equipment. So like flying suits, flying jackets, their helmets, the parachutes that go into the ejection seats and everything. So it was a really varied job, certainly for my first one. And I had 130 people work for me in that flight. So like James says, I think I was 23, straight out of uni, straight out of training. I was single, not got any kids, and you're sort of plunged into this world of you basically have to look after everyone else, and people come to you for advice about their lives. And sometimes you've had absolutely no experience of that. So it is a huge responsibility, but it's also a massive honour that people are coming to you and asking for advice.
That would make me nervous, personally, saying what you just said. I think I'll be freaking out. But, So what support do you get though, Amy? You know, you're saying it's quite, young at this point. You've gone through your training, you kind of get chucked into the deep end. What support do you get when you're in those situations?
There is a lot of support, both on station and sort of within your own flight. So you tend to have sort of your most senior non-commissioned officers as a warrant officer, and they tend to have been in for a while and they've seen pretty much everything. So they're always really good for asking advice on how to deal with things. But there's also support agencies as well, such as SAFA. Sorry, someone just come to the door, my dog's big nuts. There are a lot of sort of external support agents as well.
And following on from that role, Amy, where did you go next?
So after I'd finished, one second.
You know that it's live.
I knew that was going to happen. After I'd finished my tour at Lossiemouth, I actually went out of area for 6 months. So I went to Opshader as the detached armament officer. So my job was to look after sort of all the weapon systems and the explosive safety of everything that we were using over there. We got over 70 different munition types. Everything's very easy if you can do it in accordance with the regulation, but it's always very difficult to actually be able to do that. So it's sort of coming up with solutions and making sure everything is as safe as possible.
And then at the moment, so you're working on the Typhoons, and you're just about, well, you've been working on that, and then you're just about to start a new role as well, aren't you, Amy? So could you tell us a little bit more about your previous role and the one that you're just about to go into?
So the role that I've just finished is sort of the main job they advertise for aerosystems officers is a junior engineering officer in the squadron. So the squadron I was in, we had 20 Typhoons. and my main job really is to ensure that they're always safe to fly. So that includes sort of if there's any faults that we can't fix, making an assessment if it's actually still safe to fly or whether we do need to fix it, but also looking after the 90 technicians that worked for me as well. It was fantastic. It's easily the best 2 years of my career, and it is definitely the reason they sort of advertise that one, because it is fantastic. So I've moved from that now onto, oh, sorry, my dog has gone completely nuts. Well, so my new job is the Typhoon Electrical Engineering Authority. So the best way to explain that is I'm responsible for the safety and sort of the correct function of all the electrical systems across Typhoon. So on the squadron where I was responsible for the 20 aircraft that we had, this is now across all Typhoons in the UK. Oh. So it can be anything from like creating a repair instruction for damage. If there's no instructions already out there, we come up with new ones and approve that, but also investigating any faults. So there's multiple nations that use Typhoon. So there's us, Italy, Spain, Germany, Austria, Oman, and Saudi Arabia. So if any of them report a fault that could be a potential issue from design, it's my job to then go and investigate that and find out if there is an issue from design and whether there's something we need to do about it. Brilliant.
That's great. Thank you so much for that, Amy. It's been a really good overview of your career. And again, completely different to what James has been doing. So I know when I go to Gareth now, I'm going to hear something completely different as well. So Gareth, you've been serving in the RAF since 2000, as you mentioned to us, and you've had some amazing experiences. And I think one of the things I really enjoyed hearing about leading up to the webinar was about how important the education opportunities that were afforded to you by the RAF was. So at the moment you're based out in Qatar, so obviously that's incredibly exciting and, you know, very different type of career than probably a lot of our audience would expect right now. But you're also, as well as, you know, being a serving officer working out there, you're also working towards becoming a chartered engineer at the same time. So could you tell our audience a little bit about your current role and how the kind of academic and educational side of things is fitting into that whilst you're based out in Qatar?
Yeah, no problem. So obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the current role that I'm doing as a CE engineer relates to the provision of communications at both a tactical and operational level for our counterparts on the likes of Shader and Opkipian, to name a few. So as you mentioned, I'm actually working towards my incorporated engineering status at the moment, which will build to chartered eventually. Yeah. So the time I have free in the evenings when I'm either not taking care of one or two other bits and pieces, going to the gym, training, taking advantage of the facilities here because we're co-located with the Americans, which is quite fortunate. Hence the US flag and one or two of the other multinational flags sitting behind me. Yeah. So I'm finding plenty of time in the evening just to build a portfolio of what the work related things I've done that I can relate to the Eng spec, and then on completion of that, what I will do is obviously I'm working towards being IEng accredited by the IET. I'll then sit a good hour and a half worth of interview, and then take it from there. And obviously I'm hoping I'll successfully pass based on my portfolio and experience, and then I can start ploughing the way to chartership.
Fantastic. So how long do you think that the whole journey kind of up to chartership will take from this particular point? So
yeah, the Air Force has its own specific route that's pre-accredited with particular bodies. I mean, like I said, I'm focusing with the IET. I know that the IMechE have one or two other roles, particularly that the Aero Systems guys can work with as well. So with the IET, there is I think when you've been a flight lieutenant for 4 years, you pretty much have to just create a brief portfolio of your experience, and then you can submit that for approval, demonstrating with authorization and from other members of the organization as well that you are, you're telling the truth and everything you were saying is substantiated, and then they will forward that on through to the Eng branch sponsors, who then pass it on to the IET, and from there you can build your interview and take it on. there's also if you're going through the Air Force route, it takes 4 years. If you're like James and you're a squadron leader, I believe, James, you have to do 2 years as a squadron leader to get to work up towards chartership. Is that correct? Yeah. So again, another 2 years as a squadron leader, and then you can apply in the same method, so you can be a chartered engineer. I'm not quite there at the 4-year point, so I just want to go around the system, even though I'm a good 6 months away, but it's something I've been building towards. So I've gone through just the regular route that any other civilian would take, and member of the public would take. So that's the route I'm going through at the moment, and it's given me the opportunity to really reflect on the career that I've had, because it's been I didn't realize some of the jobs that I had. I think about 15 jobs. Wow. So it's kind of picking up the information and pulling it back out, and then I'm having to dig out old annual appraisals and go, right, what did I do in 2010? So it's probably taken me a little bit longer than it probably should do, but it's really helping build my repertoire and kind of helping me push me forward.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's very many places you can say that you've had 15 different roles like during your career. So at the moment you're based out in Qatar, and you said that the next time you're coming home is in January next year, all being well, COVID and everything. Will you then be returning back to Qatar, or are you moving on to another role after that?
No. So as Amy mentioned, I've used this role as a bargaining chip. So I'm a father. I'm married. I have 3 children. I've got a good spread of kids who are aged from 6 to 13. So I'm in a position where what I've tried to negotiate with my desk officer is a position where I retain the accommodation that I'm living in down in Buckinghamshire, and I'll be going and working, I think, pretty much on the same floor as James back at High Wycombe. So looking forward to a cup of tea, mate, when I get back. So yeah, it's one of those ones where you can have a bit of a say on where you go back to. So I'm going back to the OCC4I flight, so command control computers, communications and intelligence flight back at RAF High Wycombe, supporting not only the station but headquarters, Air Command 2, and all its constituent parts of it. And I'll be responsible, I believe, at the last count, I think the numbers fluctuate from day to day, but I think it was about 40 people I'll be responsible for there. And that's my second command tour, which my first one was as a flying officer back at RAF Cosford.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Gareth.
No problem.
Right, going on to you, Fons, last but not least at all. So you've had, as we touched upon, quite a different route into the RAF than some of the other guys that we've spoken to today. So you joined as a Commonwealth national. Can you tell us a little bit more about that process? Because I know you said you joined a little bit later, but how does it work coming from a Commonwealth background and then joining the RAF?
So if anyone is concerned about sort of work permits, visa, etc., once you join the military, whether it's the RAF or one of the other services, you're exempt from immigration control. So that's similar to having permanent residency in the UK, as long as you're in the military. And after you've completed the required number of years you need to have spent in the UK, then you can be a British national. So in terms of, if you join some other company, you will have to get a work visa if you want to sort of remain in the UK, whereas in the military, you get a stamp saying you're you're exempt from all immigration control as long as you're in the military.
Oh, okay, fantastic. And your current role, you touched upon earlier, so you're currently based in London, working on a project for the UK government. So can you just tell us a little bit more about that particular role that you're doing right now?
Yes. So Saudi Arabia is one of UK government's largest defense export customers. And the UK government has sold aircraft such as Typhoon, Tornado, Hawk, naval assets, as well as other assets to the Saudi Arabian government, and it comes with sort of the seal of approval from the UK government. And the UK government has sort of contracted that work to BAE Systems. We refer to them as the prime contractor. And my organization makes sure that what's delivered from the prime contractor is up to the correct quality and the standards, and that's what was promised.
Great. Okay. And how long have you been in that role so far, Fons?
So I've just started this role. I've been in the post for 2 months now.
2 months. And what were you doing previously to this particular role?
So I was a junior engineer officer as well. Amy mentioned that she was on the Typhoon. I was on the C-17 Globemaster in Brize Norton in Oxfordshire. Again, so we are a 24/7 squadron because so for those who don't know, C-17 is a strategic transport aircraft for the RAF. So we sort of provide the air bridge to Middle East, into other theaters, into Afghanistan, and all over the world as well. So we are 24/7. We work on a shift basis, and I was the junior engine officer for a shift of about 40 technicians maintaining the aircraft. Great.
So it's quite a different role that you've gone into now from what you were doing previously. Was that a personal choice, or was that an opportunity that you didn't know of? How did that transition work?
So the good thing about a career in the RAF is that we change roles every 2 or 3 years. So for us, what's more important is the breadth of knowledge or the experience rather than the depth. If you do want to specialize in a certain area, that option is open to you. But most of the officers will will go for breadth of experience. And being an engineer officer on a frontline aircraft or on an aircraft squadron is sort of part of our career path for Aerosystems engineer officers. So most of us who join up as Aerosystems engineer officers would get an opportunity to work hands-on. When I say hands-on, work on an aircraft squadron. Okay, lovely. That's great. So I think we've all learned a lot there about the different career paths into the RAF, and just the amazing things that you guys can do actually when you get into role. You've all had really different experiences, which is something that I don't think I really expected to hear, like how different all of your career paths have been so far. So thank you so much for joining us today and giving us that intro. I'm going to hand back to Jessica now, because I know that she's got a few last questions that she wants to run through before we run out of the hour that we've got for the webinar. But thank you so much, guys. It's been really, really fascinating for me, and I'm sure our audience as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Keith, I kind of want to bring it back to you if possible, and just really to kind of, for the audience, the people that now have listened to this, considering applying to the RAF, what kind of advice now can we give them in terms of the application process and really how to be successful and making sure they're fully prepared? Is there any extra advice that we can give them?
Yeah, certainly. One thing that a lot of people don't have an understanding of actually is that our recruitment process is open 12 months of the year. We don't actually open it up at a particular point. So we're always looking for the right person. So we've always got jobs available. So, all I could say is if you're interested, then, go along, have a look, find a little bit more information, and actually think about applying. Again, from the panel here today, like Amy's experience, she wanted it to join as quick as possible, and she did it before she left university. So she had a guaranteed job, the same with James. So, there's plenty of opportunity for anybody to actually apply. With regards to applying, it is kind of an online application process. Go and find a little bit more information out. Use the GradCracker website, to source all that information. Some good stuff on there with videos and what to do and how to prepare yourself. And I suppose for me, I would say top tips, perhaps, if you like, for recruitment would be, understand the role that you want to apply for and understand what that role particularly does, because that's what we're interested in. Are you interested in that job? And if you show that you've got a little bit of understanding and you're aware of the roles that you're applying for and what we do, that's the kind of individual we're looking for. And there's a whole raft of opportunities that become available. Don't be put off at all by our process. We call it a selection process, but we get a lot of applicants and we want the right people. And the hardest thing about the Air Force is being selected. Once you're selected, everything else, we will do our utmost to educate and train you to prepare you for your role. So, once you've been selected, we'll make sure you get through phase 1 training with as much, preparation as possible. The same for your, professional training, and then support you throughout a career in the Air Force, really.
So worst case scenario, okay, say for example someone didn't get selected, am I right in thinking you also offer them help and advice and other alternatives into the RAF? So if the student has made their mind up thinking, oh gosh, yeah, this sounds great, I want to have a life in the RAF, if they're not selected, there's still options after that, isn't there?
There certainly is. If you have got your sort of career path set, that you've gone to university and you've studied a degree and you want to be in engineering, and you know at that particular moment, you know, we didn't find you quite ready, you know, you'll be always given some good advice of how to prepare yourself for the next time round. You know, it's more than unlikely that we will say no as an outright no. So it'll be a case of, here's some advice, go away, you know, and study it and just prepare yourself if that's what you want to do. Like you mentioned there, though, not only that we have 54 different roles in total across the Air Force. So there's different paths to take, and one was the same as Gareth mentioned. If you're unsuccessful for an officer position, we have plenty of other engineering roles available at an apprenticeship level. But then we can still, you know, you can still use the Air Force as a springboard to actually, you know, further your education and actually almost have a two-part career like Gareth has.
Yeah, definitely, which is you know, it's amazing that you offer all that, which is great. So everyone, I just want to kind of round it up and say thank you very much. I want to kind of refer back, since we've got 10 minutes, I want to kind of refer back and, you know, why life in the RAF is no ordinary job. If you could sum it up, I'm going to put you all on the spot here. If you could sum it up in a roundabout sentence, how would you sum it up? And Amy, starting with you, no pressure.
For me, it's no ordinary job, because no 2 days have ever been the same. Even after 2 years of doing the same role, you don't really know what's going to happen during the day. And I love that part about the job. Yeah, every day's a challenge, but it's always really rewarding when you get to the end of it.
Brilliant. Keith?
For me, I would say the experience, really. You know, the opportunities that the Air Force has presented me, especially through my 25 years of travel, and again, education. Yeah, just the experiences that can be gained.
Brilliant. Fans?
I'll probably go slightly over a sentence, but I'll cover 3 points. The first one is the leadership opportunity that we've already discussed, the ability to lead, or the opportunity to lead 100 plus personnel at a very early stage in your career. Secondly, the opportunity to travel and to do sports, so play hard, work hard, play hard. And thirdly, the opportunity for further education, whether you want to top up your BEng into an MEng or an MSc to get your chartered status, or whether to do an MBA from one of the leading UK business schools. So those opportunities make the RAF no ordinary job for me.
Brilliant. Gareth?
Yeah, I think Fonz has pretty much stolen all my sandwiches there. I haven't really got much that on that one. So it's, yeah, obviously for me, definitely education, sport. I mean, the amount of things I've done sport-wise in the Air Force, whether it be representative level for rugby, mountain biking, snowboarding, sailing, yeah, there's all sorts I could do. One of the big things, and again, as Amy said, is the ambiguity and the day-to-day. You know, no day is the same, and it's not, you know, it's not a bit of a cliche. It isn't. It genuinely isn't. Whether it depends on the roles that you do, the people that you work with, you'll always get a you know, a really good and different opportunity.
Fantastic. And James?
Yeah, I'd echo everything everyone said, and probably just add one word, which is diversity. So, I mean, whether that's in sport or your primary role, whatever it is, there's a huge amount of diversity out there. Whether you choose to go C or AS, for example, you'll still have a very different career, as you've heard from all of us today. Loads of opportunities out there, and I say it's a really diverse career in a very short timescale that you struggle to achieve elsewhere, arguably.
Brilliant, fantastic. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I just want to say, obviously, remember to everyone that's listening that we do record this session. So if there's anything that you kind of really maybe want to re-watch, re-listen to, this recording will be available within the Gradcracker Career Centre and also in the RAF's hub. Another announcement, so we're very excited to say that the Mercedes F1 team have officially joined Gradcracker. And they are actually having a flash webinar with us on Monday, I believe. Sophie, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Monday, next week at 2 p.m. I'm actually there, forgot, yeah. I'm there. So if anyone wants to register their interest, obviously they can do that as well. Another reminder, we did email everyone this week and let you all know about the GradCracker toolkits. Remember, they are printed, so if you want a copy, you can get one, but also they are available as an ebook within the Careers Centre. So if you've got time, make sure you check that out as well. And yeah, thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate your time and your efforts, and I hope everyone's inspired now. I'm going to go off and apply to the RAF. So thank you very much, and I'll speak to you all soon. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.